Hey there, folks. Welcome to this run of This Night on the Rooftop by Riley Rethel. It is a game about playing street kids in a fantasy city on the cusp of industrial revolution where magic is fading from the world. This game is hosted through the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet, for folks who don't know, is an online gaming community that mostly focuses on role-playing games of the indie and OSR variety, although we again have someone posting Dungeons and Dragons, which, I'm 50% certain it's Lowell, so this is also true of anything he does, but that it's more likely it's part of his covert means of sending messages to his handlers than it is an actual game. But who knows? Join it and you may be either play Dungeons and Dragons or be conducted into the world of international spycraft. But yes, if folks could go around and we'll do a quick introduction, and I guess it's such a weird thing because I'm coming up to a month where Puckett is not running his year-long thing, so we are no longer talking about what interests us. So I guess we'll continue it here. If you want to mention something that your name, your pronouns, and something that has interested you recently in the past few weeks, Puckett, if you want to pick it up.
Hey there, I am Puckett. I use he, him pronouns. I really don't know what the hell to do with my Mondays now. It's really, really weird. But something I've been into for the last few weeks. Today I was catching up on the DVR and I was watching a Vice documentary about black quarterbacks in football and the heavy price they pay and the ridiculous expectations that are placed on them just because of the color of their skin and, well, football teams being traditionally owned by a bunch of old white dudes. So it's a hell of an interesting documentary.
Cool, Nicholas, and if you want to.
Hi, I'm Nicholas, and I, for one, am super excited. So I've got two things I want to talk about just in brief. For one, I'm super excited that we've got some 5th edition going on the Gauntlet. I come from a D&D background before I joined the Gauntlet, and I have subverted techniques from the Gauntlet and taken it into my home group. And so I feel like this is just like the next evolution of that same process where I can just see all of the wonderful PBTA approaches getting applied to some very classic D&D and just being an excellent time. So I think that's exciting. The one thing that I have been into recently is keyboards, and I made this little keyboard for myself, and it's taken a little bit of getting used to. The next step is going to be switching the key layout from your standard QWERTY to Colmac DH, which I will be attempting in about 1 month.
Cool. And David, if you want to introduce yourself and your pronouns.
Yeah, hi folks, my name is David and I use he, him pronouns. As for what I've been most interested in the last few weeks at least, it's kind of a split thing. One is that after probably 2 years of owning the book and not having been able to actually use it, I am finally in a game of Night Witches by Jason Morningstar, and this game is so frickin' fun. So I've had a really good time playing that. Just 1 session in so far, but 4 to go. But above and beyond that, I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to be running during the next GCOG, and I have no idea what we'll be running, but I'll come up with something, and I've got a couple months to figure it out.
Cool. And I am Steven, he, him. I recently I have I just read through The All-Consuming World by Cassandra Kaw. Basically about clones stealing a planet from their AI overlords. It's pretty fun. A lot of cussing and violence and medical horror. So it's also just uh basically a heist movie in space. Yeah, cool. So yeah, all games hosted, and to kind of wrap things up here, all games hosted on the Gauntlet make use of an open door policy. We are all here to have fun and tell a story together. It sometimes happens in real life that you become uncomfortable at the table. Feel free to step away as long as you need. No one will hold it against you, and you are free to return whenever you feel ready. If you are able to let the group know if and when you expect to return, that would be helpful to the rest of us in terms of framing scenes, but we understand that sometimes emergencies happen, and it's not always possible. Besides the open door, we are also making use of several other safety tools. The first of these is the X card. If at any point something in the fiction is making you uncomfortable, whether it's a particularly violent description or that an NPC has the same name as a friend, feel free to make an X sign with your arms, type X into the chat, or simply say X card. If someone signals the X card and I haven't noticed, whether because I'm speaking or looking away from the screen, feel free to interrupt me to call my attention to it. Either way, we'll stop the fiction and probably ask to clarify what you are X carding, but there's no need to justify or explain your reasoning beyond that. We'll also be using script change, which is a safety tool which uses video editing terminology to help us talk about our scenes. The first of these is pause, which asks us to stop the fiction and check in with everyone that they are happy with where the scene is going. We might use this if we just broached a potentially triggering subject and want to make certain that everyone is comfortable, or the fiction has become a bit muddled and we want to stop to work out what is happening before continuing. After that is fast forward, which asks us to wrap the scene we are currently in, maybe work out in broad strokes what's happening, and move on to the next scene. We might call on this tool to skip over something we don't want to see the details of, like a torture scene, or when we've gotten bogged down to minute details and want to pull a scene to a close. Next is rewind, which asks us to return to something that has already happened in the fiction to change and remove it. This might be because someone decides in retrospect that part of the fiction makes them uncomfortable and needs to be changed, or it might be because we realize that there is something much more interesting that should have happened last scene, or that someone has a really good comeback that they just thought of and want to add into the fiction. Finally, there is frame by frame, which asks us to regularly check in during the scene to make certain that everyone is comfortable. I've never seen it used, but it probably will come up in a situation where we all agree that this is a difficult or potentially triggering topic that we're not necessarily completely comfortable with, but we still really want to see. And so it's a reminder to us to turn our safety tools up to max and to tread lightly for everyone's safety. And finally, we have Lines and Veils. Lines and Veils is a document the table puts together before play begins, in which we list subjects that we want to pay particular attention to. Subjects that are listed under lines are things that we do not want showing up in play at all, either described or implicitly. They might exist somewhere in our world, but we will never encounter them or have them referenced. One we regularly include on the Gauntlet is sexual assault. Sexual assault and rape are things that will never be described or mentioned in Gauntlet games, usually. Subjects that are listed under veils are things that we are fine being mentioned in play, but we do not want described in detail or examined too closely. Often sexual content is part of this list. On the Gauntlet, we often play characters who enter into consenting romantic and sexual relationships with each other, but a lot like in TV shows or movies, whenever things progress past a certain point, we fade to black. We know what happens, but we don't need to describe it. And then finally, subjects that are listed under Ask First are things that we are fine having in the fiction and seeing described, but we want to remind the table to check in when they happen. Subjects listed under interest, yeah, and that is everything. So if any of us stumble into a line or veil accidentally, myself or another player will step in to politely remind you about the line or veil, and we'll adjust the fiction and then continue. It's important to remember that lines and veils are a living document. If at any point you feel like you need to add something to the document, either because you initially forgot or because something has occurred at the table to make it relevant, feel free. If you're adding it in the middle of play, drop myself or the group a message so we know the change has been made and we can go take a look at it. So yeah, at this point, if people could, I believe yes, I did remember it. If people could take a look at the safety tab and do a quick run through of the lines and veils there, add any that you want, and then type OK in the chat where you are happy with where it is at.
Quick question: is there a romance table for this, or
Oh yeah, let me grab a romance table from somewhere else. That's another newer thing that is in some Gauntlet games that I did not add to this one yet. Let's see here. I believe this has a romance tab, hopefully. No, it doesn't. I'll add that and we will get to it in a moment, but I'll need to look through, or if anybody has one open that has it, I'll copy it in then. But it looks like everyone has gone through the lines and veils. So just to kind of go over what we have here, we have lines on harm to domestic animals, racism, sexual assault, torture, homophobia, transphobia, intentional infliction of blunt force head trauma, and sexism. We have veils on sexual content, and we have Ask First on bullying and harm to children. So great. That pulls us into the kind of what this game is about, just to kind of give a refresher. I'm just going to kind of pull in the introduction here from the actual game text. But this is a game about gazing out over the smokestacks after dark, with the wind in your hair and 1,000 lights of progress on the streets below. This is a game about a friend at your side as you teeter along the edges of the Great Bridge, browsing the enchanter's stalls that litter the cobble. This is a game about casting spells given by the elder daemons to evade the city guards in case they send you to work in a factory, making you into little more than fuel for the ever-burning industry of metal that seeks to drive all magic from the world. This is a game about making friends with alleyways and pilfering pocket pies from windows and toppling the works of those whose greedy hands stain all they touch. This is a game about industry, magic, children, and revolution. And it looks like Puckett has said that he added it in. So yeah, if you could just add your name there and type in if what you're comfortable with in terms of romance with both PCs and NPCs. That's yes, maybe, or no. And you can add any notes that you want to the far right-hand side there. Cool. And just as a refresher, so Puckett, myself and David all have yeses. Nicholas has maybe, so it's a reminder to us that just to do a check-in of basically treating it as an ask first is generally how I see maybes. That to check in, are we okay with proceeding in that way? Still, usually whenever I instigate romance, I'll usually check in, but it's just kind of a reminder to us about who has the most buy-in there and who will be kind of most up for it. But yes, so this is the kind of world we're playing in. It's a world where magic is still there, but it's no longer the force that it once was. It's been displaced by the forces of industry and production, and what magic remains is often hidden away, weakened, or at the edges of the world. So I'm wondering, to get a sense here now, I've been talking a lot, so let's kind of go around. I was curious what interests folks had in terms of uh, playbooks that they were particularly interested in, and we'll go with David first, and then go back around counterclockwise.
I actually haven't thumbed through the playbooks just yet, so I'll go to the character keeper and start kind of clicking on them and just kind of reading over their moves. But I'm happy to go last in terms of just kind of selecting playbooks and putting ideas out there.
Yeah, and the way this character keeper is set up is that there are 4 columns. If everybody could just choose one and type your name into the player section. And basically the way it works is that you can select the drop down to look through the playbooks, and it will populate out everything in the area below based on the playbook that's there. So yeah, Nicholas, did you have any playbooks you were particularly looking at?
I am drawn to the Gutter Witch. I kind of also think that I think it was called the TikTok or the Tinker Talkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tinker Talk was pretty interesting. Probably one of those two. And I've never play like the muscle of a party, so the Axe Kid has me curious. But probably Gutter Witch or Tinker Talk.
Cool. And Puckett, did you have one you were drawn to?
Basically, everyone that Nicholas said, except for the Axe Kid. I mean, my first thought was Gutter Witch, but
let's all be Gutter Witches. It'll be great.
Like, how could it go wrong? So yeah, I could use another couple minutes to look through the playbooks.
For my part, having kind of thumbed through everything just quickly, Axe Kid, Disciple of the Tired God, and perhaps Runaway Princess, maybe, are the ones that are standing out to me.
Cool. And I think I'm most drawn to suit you to the such scramblers, so I think that puts us all kind of nicely to puts me at least one that nobody else expressed interest in. But yeah, so I'm wondering then, Nicholas Puckett, you seem to have kind of most overlap. Is there one that either of you are really kind of interested in over the other?
I think I will play the Tinker Talk, just so that I'm not chasing after ancient tomes of forbidden knowledge for at least one game.
All right, I will go ahead and play a Gutter Witch then.
Cool. And that leaves you open, David, then.
I had a quick question about the Disciple of the Tired God.
Yep.
On their moves, they make references to something called a miracle clock.
It is not there in this character keeper proper, but there is a section in the city that I added called assorted clocks that you can basically, you get a 4-tick clock, and whenever it fills, forgetting if it's actually there. Let me bring up, I think it's only in the playbook section. I'll check in the description there. Let me bring that up. Or my computer can just be stupid. Yeah, let me just copy this text in because my voice is getting tired. So that's basically what the miracle clock is. It's a 6-tick clock that when it's full, tell one of the city playbooks that the tire god's faith has spread there in some small way, and ask or describe what that looks like.
Ah, okay. And the city playbooks are things
They
like markets,
are,
canals, alleys.
yes, those are like, this is a belonging outside belonging game.
Right.
And much like in other belonging outside belonging games, the world is kind of collectively GM'd by going to those playbooks.
I'll give that playbook a try. It was between that and the Axe Kid after I kind of looked over everything, but I kind of would like to tinker around with a playbook that it's got its own little sub mechanics tied to it, and so we'll give it a go.
Cool. So if you go over to the city tab, there's now a 6 checkboxes clock there. That is the miracle clock. But yeah, so basically character creation for this Night on the Rooftop, like a lot of belonging outside belonging games, is pretty straightforward. It will ask you to come up with a kind of some names, some looks, some kind of interesting bits about your character. And besides that, you'll also get a collection of moves. Moves are the main way that you interface with the system in belonging outside belonging games. They're how you usually get and spend tokens. These are things that are generally kind of indicative of the way your character interacts with the world. Growth moves are things that are difficult but worthwhile to do, and you gain a token whenever you do them. For example, as the Soot Scrambler, I can give someone my trust, burn away corruption, or take a moment to watch something beautiful and peaceful. Chill moves are things that your character can always do, and they do not gain you or spend a token to do them, but they're good things to fall back on if you're like trying to figure out what your character would do in a situation and you're drawing a blank. For example, as the Soot Scrambler, I can always smear soot on someone, climb or squirm up somewhere difficult, or shrug. And then finally, there are desperate moves. Desperate moves are things that you do when things get difficult or dangerous and you need to get out of a jam. They require that you spend a token, so you do not always get to do them. You have to have at least one token to do them. As the Soot Scrambler, I can always drive someone off, shroud myself in ash and smoky darkness, or go after someone. There's also for each of those moves a bit of highlighted text. This is stuff that you might answer out loud, that you might answer to yourself when you make the move, or a few of them, like for the Disciple of the Tire God, give you specific mechanical things that you're supposed to do. These are just helpful ways of fleshing out the fiction of what is your character doing. Here are some examples where it might be interesting. But right now, each of us should go through names, figure out a couple looks, and figure out our kind of special thing. Each character gets a special thing that they choose. And basically they have the thing that we our special thing will have a question associated with it that we will direct at another player character. I should note the names are not comprehensive. You're allowed to pick a completely different name. But those are there for inspiration if you're drawing up a blank.
And which character qualities did you say are going to be assigned by other players?
It's not that they'll be assigned. Like it's the one that's unique to your character. You'll like each of the choices has a question associated with it, and you'll direct that question to another player character.
think I'm ready.
Cool. And Nicholas and David, where do the two of you feel you? Okay. Uh, have you picked who the tired god is, David?
Oh, yeah, let me go ahead and plug that in just real quick.
And I think I'm ready as well. Didn't find a photo, but I think that's okay.
Cool. So cool. Basically what we're gonna do now, and I think once we get through this, we'll take a break and we'll see where we're at, but we'll definitely probably take a break. Is that we'll go through a quick round of introductions and introduce our characters and sort of direct the questions that we have associated with us to the other player characters. So I am playing Alloy, she, her. I am the Soot Scrambler, which means I am a demon. I'm a demon child. Which in this world, demons are left a bit vague as to how we're defining them. The things that are true of them is that they are always a kind of other within the city, and that they are generally viewed as someone that is dangerous to the kind of powers that be within the city by their existence. And we'll sort of define in play what demons are and what they are like. But my basic idea for Alloy is that she is. I sort of like the idea because they kind of mentioned that the Fae are sort of retreating from the world. Is that some of the Fae have sort of decided to remake themselves in order to be able to live within the city. And that sort of means like not just changing, but sort of doing a full, like, I guess, Steven Universe and like actually rebirthing themselves as like new beings. And so I kind of imagine that Alloy is like formerly a very old Fae, but she kind of but she kind of is reborn now as this younger child with no real access to any of those old memories of that old life before. And she has horns and eyes of metal. And I think her horns are specifically of this very intricate silver work that I guess in the right to the right buyer of dark deeds would be quite valuable. But yeah, those are my looks. And my favorite thing my favorite thing to touch is the roughest brickwork. And I'll get into the question that's associated with that later. But yeah, that is basically my idea for Alloy kind of summed up. Do folks have anything they want to ask about Alloy or who she is?
Have you been left behind for good?
Left behind by who? The Fae?
Yeah.
I think that there's a kind of gap between us. Like, I think that, I mean, this is, I keep going back to Steven Universe, but now I'm thinking, I think that there's definitely a kind of sense of awkwardness or uneasiness around the old fae, because we're sort of these like we're sort of the death of someone they knew very well, and it's this thing that is very kind of sad for the older fae to interact with, even though Alloy can kind of understand that, but doesn't necessarily agree that like it should be this like act of mourning.
So it almost sounds like you're a traumatic reminder for the old ones.
Yeah.
Do you want to actually stay with the Fae, or do you just kind of want to cut out on your own?
I mean, I think Alloy's definitely cut out on her own, and that's kind of partly because that's what her past self made her current nature to be, like to not be within the parks and wilderness, but to like find places to exist and kind of find within the city.
Can I ask, going forward, how much Fae involvement are you interested in seeing in this game? Just because I'm thinking about possible NPCs or twists to introduce, that kind of thing.
I mean, I'd be definitely down for that. I think that there's even like the reason I kind of went with phase, because there are some like suggested NPCs for like the park that are like the woods and the fae and stuff. So I'd be down for like interacting with some fae out in the parks.
Noted.
But cool, that looks like that is it for me. And with our Tinker Talk, Nick Gears, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I am playing Gears. I don't know as much about the story of Gears. I think I'm going to discover their relationship to the world through play. But the things that I saw that I thought were pretty interesting were those pick list items, the steam powered hat. And I was trying to figure out what could a steam powered hat be. I think that it is kind of Ghostbusters slash Pokemon esque. I think that you take the hat, you throw it out there, you activate it, and it captures spirits or something. I haven't really figured out what the spirits or something is. And so I'm looking forward to some sort of an adventure where we do some capturing of spirits. And I do have a dog a small fluffy dog. And I am curious, who found them with you is one of those questions. Are we diving into that question yet, or is
No,
that for later?
we'll introduce everyone first so that
Okay.
we know who folks
I will
are.
hold that question then. So yeah, I figure I am a shirker of responsibilities. I should be down in the mines being productive. When they send me down there, I just fill my pockets, and they have stopped pulling me off the rooftops. And so I'm kind of the quintessential slacker up here on the roof with you.
I mean, out of curiosity, like, is the steam powered hat something you made yourself, or is this like something that's actually used down in the mines?
I think that someone swindled me. They sold me this hat, and so I had to make it functional. And so I've been working on it for like 3 years now, which is a lifetime. And I'm convinced I've been telling you stories, but you haven't seen it in action yet.
Does this hat have a chimney?
It does, but I have to pop open the top in order to extract the chimney.
Okay.
I think that's all I have for now.
And you said that you are you currently employed at this factory?
Oh yeah, I'm on the payroll. I just haven't shown up in, like 2 months, and I need to get a good paycheck. So
Okay.
I'm going to be a little bit of a scammer, if you will. I'm going to be looking for easy opportunity.
Do you mind if my character formerly worked at the same factory as you?
Not at all.
That works. Thank you.
So the factory also has mines underneath, and so they realized I was not skilled enough to work in the factory proper, and so they sent me down to the mines, and then they realized that I was non-productive even just extracting from the mines. Were you a factory worker or were you a mines worker?
I'm thinking factory. However, it's kind of immaterial. Either one works. If it would be helpful to have me down there in the mines with you, we can definitely make that happen.
No problem at all. I think
Does
factory
your
is great.
does your dog have a name?
I like Scraps. I think Scraps is a great name for a found dog.
Cool. Oh yes, that also reminds me. Okay, what are Scraps' pronouns? Do you call Scraps he, she, it?
Uh, mm, he.
Okay.
Oh, and what does he eat? That is a very interesting question. What doesn't he eat? I think is the real question. Um, yeah, he has eaten many, many things that I have created that a dog should not eat, and it's concerning.
Cool. And yeah, let's continue on then to our disciple of the tired god.
Yeah, so my character's name is Damien Six Fingers, he, him pronouns. But the god who he believes travels with him calls him Child, and that is a name that Damien does not like anyone else calling him. The brief backstory that I've got for Damien is that he comes from a series of orphanages that he was moved around from place to place throughout childhood until he found early, perhaps too early employment in the same factory as Gears, where he worked far too long and far too hard at far too young of an age until he got old enough that he picked up something of a rebellious streak and was thrown out on the street after having stood up to the evil bad guy factory manager. Having no other place to go and finding the streets to be a very hostile and unsafe place, I went underground, literally, and found myself wandering for quite some time among the sewers, where I was very alone, but in many ways safer and perhaps more at peace than I ever had been before. It was during that time that I came upon what I believe to be a statue of my god that I now serve. This great, ancient, six-armed statue of an androgynous figure with one hand outstretched in offering. Within the hand was placed a cold iron necklace. And upon having taken it, I have formed a bond that is some mix of telepathic and empathic with a god that has no name and seems to have forgotten itself, but whom is my best friend, at least perhaps until I met the rest of the group.
Yeah, and Nicholas does bring it up. What's what's the situation with Damien's fingers?
Yeah, no, it's Six Fingers because he actually is a well-known pickpocket. So rather than having a deficit of fingers, it's almost like he has an extra one. He's so nimble and dexterous.
Nice.
And I'm curious. You say that the name that it unnamed calls you child. Is that affectionate, or is it because it just doesn't comprehend like naming things?
I see it as affectionate. Like I said, I was kind of moved around from orphanage to orphanage and have no sense of parents to speak of. And so to have this thing, this god, calling me its child is something that fills a very, very deep void, very deep hole in me. So I interpret it as affectionate, although, again, this is a thing with an intelligence that is altogether inhuman and kind of has forgotten what itself is. So there might be part of just, I don't know what you are, so I'm going to call you child that goes along with it, too.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm kind of curious about, because you chose it for your looks, I'm curious, like, if we want to kind of define the world a little bit. You said it says you have a cold iron necklace. I'm wondering if you got that in any way to like ward off Fae or something like that.
That might be an effect that it carries with it. The cold iron necklace is what was in the big statue's outstretched hand and is kind of almost like a symbol or a manifestation of this god that I serve, but it probably carries with it some kind of power beyond my knowledge, and the Fae could definitely be a force that it can interact with. We can certainly play to find out, though.
Cool. And Nicholas or Puckett, do either of you have any questions?
Um, what ages are we thinking these characters are?
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that. I generally imagine that I would usually say like maybe given what we're deciding, like tween to early teen is usually kind of how I imagine it. Maybe even 12, maybe at the lowest. But
Okay.
like I think the premise is that we are not like 17, 18-year-olds. We're definitely not like adults or young adults. We are kids.
How did you feel about the last grift that I said, hey, we can make some easy money. We don't have to go into that factory anymore.
Was that directed toward me?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we both came from the factory, right? And I got the feeling that you either aren't going to the factory anymore or they told you not to come back. Is that assumption correct first? Or,
Right.
Yeah.
I was rebellious enough to stand up to the factory owner, and I was summarily kicked out on the street.
Yeah. So when I tell you about a great way to get money from people on the streets by doing basically a scam, are you in on it? Is this easy money that you also want to make, or?
To the extent that I can avoid being dishonest, I think I would try to. And yet at the same time, I have no personal qualms against scamming, robbing, or otherwise taking down this factory owner.
Yeah, but it's not targeted at the factory owner. This is like a broad, we just go down onto the streets, we do our gig, and people give us money, and we disappear before they ask questions.
I feel like I've been targeted by that kind of thing too many times in the past to feel comfortable with it. But
right, well,
hey, if
I'll see you when I
desperate
get
times
back
call
then.
for it. Yeah.
Gears doesn't mention all the times that he has specifically targeted child.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll see you later.
Wait, don't I know you? Oh, okay.
But cool. And Puckett, your character, your gutter witch.
Okay, so I started off with this super lame name, Fern Gully Mossbrook, and I really didn't like that, so I found myself a better one. It's Tabitha Tarantula, and I will look really meanly at anybody who doesn't call me Tabitha Tarantula, although if they just call me Tabby, Tab, something like that, to acknowledge that I'm using that name, that's cool too. But yeah, I just, I was in this academy, but it was like filled with all these rich kids, and well, yeah, one thing led to another, and then I realized, hey, chaos magic, it doesn't require any of that stuff. So now I'm like out in the world, I'm doing my thing, I'm enjoying it. I talk to like frogs, I talk to rats. There's just so many cool, amazing things to see and do out there. I mean, who needs like a bunch of stuffy rich kids and books and stuff like that anyway? I got my sewer maps.
I have two things that I want to jump in with immediately after hearing that. One is with respect to the sewer maps. I would definitely take interest in that because that is where I found the statue of my god, and I have no idea where to find it again. So that's
Awesome.
one thing.
Awesome.
Two, if Tabitha Tarantula is a big fan of chaos magic, is it possible that she has a sketchbook that she carries around that is just full of like random sigil doodles that she scrawls and that kind of thing? Or is that not the kind of chaos magic she's working?
What do you mean random?
Oh, there's intent.
Yeah. There's no randomness. But it is one of those things like, like I carefully, like I'll stare at a door for like hours until I get just like, it's in my head. I see exactly the symbol I need to kind of scrawl on it so that the lock will like pop open at the right moment for us. That sort of thing. So yeah, it's now I know what this stuff does because I've like, admittedly trial and error. Maybe I could have done it a little bit faster if I'd been in class or whatever, but I wouldn't have had as much time to practice. And also I'd been dealing with like a bunch of rich kids and doing like stuff like, what does this sigil mean? It means it automatically empties the chamber pot, So, I mean, and really, if you're inside, maybe that's useful, but I'm not inside. So yeah, doors opening when I need them to, that's useful. Tills opening when I need them to, that's useful. Being able to find the tadpoles that are going to know like which way the tide is going, that's helpful. So yeah, very, very specific, very intentional.
And to clarify, I take it that Tabitha is no longer attending this school.
Oh God, no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can say all they want about like, non-payment of tuition and social class and everything like that, but really I left it that.
Yeah, and I'm actually curious, does Tabitha have some like who put up the payment for this tuition? Do you have family or
there was a witch who thought that maybe this would get me off the streets and maybe make some kind of respectable witch out of me. But I showed her.
Cool.
She's a sweetheart, though. She really does. Like, she doesn't just mean well, she tries to do well.
Do you talk to all animals? Like Scraps, for example. Have you ever talked to Scraps?
If I had, I would need Scraps' permission to tell you because I absolutely respect Critter's confidence.
Mm.
So if they don't want me to know that I'm talking to them, or if they don't want others to know that I'm talking to them, I need to kind of vet it first, just to make sure they're okay with it.
And then look here. What do you think's wrong with this hat? Why didn't it work last time?
Well, that sounds like one of those questions we need to answer in a little bit, doesn't it?
Okay.
Any other questions that are not like the playbook question?
Oh, was that a playbook question?
Well,
No, it was
sort of.
it wasn't a playbook question. It was just a Gears question, I think.
Okay. So if it's not like that question about what was wrong with it last time? Well, that's easy. And I think, let me just double check this real quick. Yeah. I reach over to Alloy and like get some and like run my finger across them. And like get some soot on my finger, and then I mark a sigil on it, and now it actually, like, it's a steam whistle instead of just a chimney.
Okay, I guess that's going to work.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's useful, but at least it does something.
Great. So yeah, and actually, how about we stick on you since we've gotten through introductions here. Well, and actually, no, we've just come up on the hour mark here. So I think we'll call a 10-minute break and then come back together to kind of go through these questions we direct at each other, if that's cool with folks. Cool. So I'll see everyone at 10 after. Get back in a bit.
Stephen, I posted a photo of Gears that is much too young. Can your imagination picture this character 13 years old?
I mean, sure.
Okay.
I'm also back.
Welcome back.
Cool. To check in, have folks had enough of a break? Are they good with proceeding? Cool. Great. So yeah, let's go back around here, and Puckett or Tabitha, did you want to open up with your kind of question to direct at the rest of the group?
All right. So if I am correct, that falls in it for me under books. And that, sewer maps. Who explores them with me? I think Damien Sixfingers already volunteered for that.
Yep, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Cool. What have you found on your explorations of the sewers together?
Like really cool junk. I don't know what it does, but like it's metal, so it has to do something, right? And I can probably give that to Gears. Found some awesome rats, like just straight up sewer rats, and they're like all brown and stuff. And they're really cool too. They like sit up and shitter. So, they they were kind of rude until they got to know me. They're still not quite sure about Damien, but the rats and I are pretty much on the cool side of things now. So, it works out. Damien, what did you find?
Yeah, and do you share Tabitha's excitement about her discoveries?
I mean, I've spent so much time in the sewers that these are all a little bit more old hat to me, but they don't ever really lose the charm. I think that the little metal doodads and the rats are all a nice part of this lovely sewer environment that I call home, or at least used to. But as to the question of what I have myself found in the sewers, perhaps I've noticed that there is a patch of sewer that brushes up kind of dangerously close to where the mines are expanding. That Gears and Gears you specifically have worked in, and I have worked kind of adjacent to. Mines are maybe encroaching a bit on the sewers, a little bit too close for comfort.
Cool.
Every time I go down there, I make sure to try to put up some wards, just to make sure that the rats and tadpoles and anything else living down there has a safer place than they otherwise might. Basically just stuff to, give people an icky feeling if they start to go down that tunnel, so they, quickly come with some kind of reason to turn back and go another direction or whatever. Just trying to give them something of a safe habitat. Everybody needs a place to like chill, right?
Cool. And yeah, coming around to you. And actually, I wanted to check: does your character prefer to be called Damien or Child, or is Child only what the god calls you?
I go by Damien with most people.
Okay.
Child is kind of between me and this
Okay.
nameless god. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, if you want to give us your question here.
Yeah, so mine is who has been looking for the history of it unnamed, this tired god whom I serve? I have an idea in mind, but anyone can be welcome to volunteer.
I mean, I feel like maybe that could be me. I feel like Alloy probably goes about it in a very non like I do not think Alloy's investigations are particularly elucidating. I think Alloy asks you a lot of questions about like, but what is It's a Name's favorite color? Do they have a favorite song? Like, are they a morning person or a night person? Like, I think that there, whenever the subject comes up about the tired god, I think Alloy just like throws you this like barrage of like questions about them, and like, do they prefer chocolate or vanilla?
No, that works. That works. I
And
think
I'm curious,
probably.
like, does Damien find this endearing or frustrating?
I think it's probably a mix of both, but the longer it goes on, the more it leans toward the frustrating, because part of it is Damien doesn't know the answer to those questions himself, and the god he serves is so incomprehensible and so paradoxical, that the idea of asking what its opinion is or what its favorite flavor of something is in an effort to kind of define and pin it down is almost impossible by definition. So I think
Boxers are brief. I mean, I just wear pants, but I hear that that's a thing that other people like to ask.
yeah, I don't know that it even wears pants. You'd have to ask it personally. This is kind of the most that I would say to that, I think.
Okay, cool. But yeah, cool. Gears, what is your question?
So, someone found scraps with me, and the question is, who found them with me? And do I answer that
So
question?
you could suggest someone. Are there any volunteers for that question?
Got it. Yeah, so looking for a volunteer for someone who found scraps with me.
I was staying silent because I could take that one, but I want to give Puckett the chance to like opt out of like volunteering to like have an adorable pet dog.
Well, it wouldn't be my pet.
I know, but I mean, it would be kind of. You'd be like the co-parent with Gears.
I was actually looking at the whole walking in the rain thing with your question, because I actually one of my growth moves is making rain fall. So I was looking at that and thinking that made the most sense.
So I think maybe the dog is a rescue. Scraps is a rescue from the factory.
Yeah,
And
I'm just curious. Is he like the canary dog?
yeah, exactly. And
Actually, we should actually bring up here, because we do have in safety a line on harm to domestic animals. So that probably, I would say probably we can't say that that's a thing in this setting. So
As long as no domestic animals come to harm, it's not an issue.
okay.
right.
Like if a dog is in a mine cave and gets out alive, no problem.
Yeah, I think, yeah, sure. I think this was a pitch by the owners. They had bought this dog to be used as like the canary for the mine.
Right. They had moved on
And
from canaries. These are more affordable. They're more plentiful. Give it a shot. Take it down there.
yep, and I just, it wouldn't fit scraps wouldn't fit in your coat. So
Right.
like you had to like get Alloy to come along with you, and she I stuffed Gears down my shirt, and like whenever there was the bark, I just had to make a loud barking noise, and they just didn't question it because I'm the demon child.
Exactly. Thank you for rescuing him, by the way.
Oh, it was a team effort.
I know. I distracted them a little bit, but I tried 3 times. It kept just running out the back of my coat. I got to get that hole fixed.
Great. And yeah, my thing thrown out is who walked in the rain? Who walks out? Who walks out in the rain with me?
I mean, I make the rain, so hello. My question is, what's your favorite type of rain?
Oh, I mean, what isn't my favorite type of rain? I mean, they all have like different dance beats. I mean, like a really hard rain, you could do something really like kick into, but then a really like light rain, you can do a slow dance. Oh, do you want to do a slow dance, Tabby? And I just like grab you and do a little like a surprisingly good waltz. Like you do not know where I learned to waltz, but I apparently can.
And yet, strangely, the rain slows down to actually meet that time signature.
Mhm. Cool.
It's the strangest thing.
I'm still like we're standing out in this rain, but I'm still somehow covered in soot.
Well, that's why I often like run a finger across you and like draw something on doors because, I know you're always going to have soot. So
Awesome. So that is the kinds of like the questions to answer between us. And once we go through characters, we'll want to go over to our. So I do want to quickly direct us over to the city before we get into the world. There are a few things that are true of the city, and we're free to add on or expand on these as we want if anybody has something they want to add as a principle. That the new will always win over the old, change is inevitable. The city can talk directly to you or in a sideways manner. Everyone will have a chance to speak, even if it is important that they stay silent. And we're here for each other, even if we sometimes fight or yell. In the end, we're the closest friends. We're the closest friends that can be. And so those are just things we want to keep in mind when we're kind of portraying the city and its world, but that's kind of what is true of it. The other thing that's not listed there is that the rich will always hate us, pretty much. We are by because we are young and poor, the rich will always hate us, at least for that, if not for other reasons. But yes, those are the principles, and so I kind of want to throw that out there. And a couple of the things to keep in mind here is that this game does have a kind of advancement system. Our characters all have desires. Whatever they happen in the fiction, you get to mark it and say and like with the little checkbox there. For example, I have desires of lurk, find a new family, have someone call you handsome, and mess up a place that is normally full of luxury. And besides that, there are also some blank spaces. Whenever you think it occurs to your character that they really want to do something, just write it in there, and that will become a new desire. When you mark 3 desires, your character gets to change. And that is there in your growth options over in the city tab. You can choose to replace a move with one that fits you better, write a new move that connects you to a friend, write a new move that represents how you've changed, or abandon a move that no longer represents who you are. So that is a thing that you can, eventually your character can grow and do one of those things. Our city also has a revolution clock, which is there in the city tab. Basically, anytime that we've done 3 scenes, after doing 3 scenes in any of the locations within our city, will clear out that place's particular revolution track and mark one in the upheaval clock for our city. Once all four are marked, we will choose one of the symbols of change and choose to add it as a new thing that is true of that location. So that's just something to keep in mind. Ourselves and the city will change over the course of the game. That is part of the game. And so what we want to go through now is to go through and play around with kind of figuring out what the places of our world look like. And this will probably take up this second, third, if not the rest of the session. But we'll see how long it takes. Again, I'm getting a little bit hoarse. I don't know why, I'm just a little hoarse today. Puckett, if you wanted to open up and give us and read the description for the markets, and then I'll throw it out to you to pick one. Actually, we'll hold off on that if you want to specifically, because we have the canals. So actually, I will throw this out to Nicholas, to Gears, if you want to read out the markets and pick one from that aesthetics list that really stands out to you.
I think that sounds great, because this is where I run all of my my ploys for easy money. So the markets, stalls and shops are and ever-changing desires. Silver and gold flow like water as the rich get richer and the poor relentlessly tread water. You can find anything here, and all of it, down to the last tiny curiosity, will have a price. Surely that's the part that I was to read, and then choose what?
There is, you see beneath it, there are aesthetics. These are looks or things that can be found within this part of the city. So, for example, aesthetic choices for the marketplace are traveling tents, magical exploitation, the press of innovation, warfront curios, things like that.
Yes, I like the traveling tents. I think the idea that you go tomorrow and those people aren't there anymore, and now there's these new tents that you get to interact with. Should I pick both?
No, I was gonna throw this over to David or anyone else in the group. Is there anything there that you see that stands out to you, or that you want to like throw out a suggestion to the rest of the group?
Focusing on the markets in particular?
Mm-hmm. For this one, yeah.
Can we include landmarks?
Landmarks will be actually kind of things that we have well, like, what do you have in mind for a landmark here?
Oh, if we're doing kind of a, turn of the century industrial kind of thing, maybe not on the markets necessarily, but I was thinking of maybe a clock tower or something along those lines.
Yeah, there is that Clockwork Dreams. And I like the idea that, is it this really elaborate, like, clock tower that has, like, just all these clockwork figures that, like, come out on the hour?
Got it. So maybe, I imagine you have this sort of open air market, but off on one side, sort of looming, watching over everything, is sort of a large kind of Big Ben style clock tower with the face always pointing downward at the various marketplace goers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I will toss this in here. This is actually a kind of a thing that is down in the faces. I will add a clock tower great and elaborate. That I should note that basically the way this works is that there are, besides on each of these sheets, there are moves. Each of them has 3 moves that, much like the moves for a character sheet, have bold text, which are the thing that happens, and then some italicized text that includes suggestions, ideas, or interesting questions that these moves bring up that might be interesting to inform the fiction. So, for example, the marketplace has put a price on something, offer what you can't get anywhere else, and draw attention to disparities in wealth. They also all have impulses, which are when you're looking for, like, what is a motivation for the scene or for a character or for the world to kind of pursue. These are things to fall back on. So the market is to demand payment, to get crowded, and to bow to the whims of the rich. Finally, there are also faces. Faces are ideas for characters or places that we might interact with in the scene if you want to pull someone in. There are a bunch of character suggestions down there, ranging from a fellow street kid looking for a meal for the market, or the middle of the market strangely clear. And as we said before, this is a world where the market might speak to us, so the market could have a name and pronouns of its own. So that is why some of these places also have names and pronouns with them. We might end up like speaking to that clock tower eventually. But cool. And now I wanted to pull over to you, Tabitha, for the canals, if you want to introduce them to us.
I mean, now that you've mentioned that we can talk to a clock tower, we are definitely going to talk to a clock tower. I mean, that may be more of a Gears thing than my thing, but still. I mean,
I've tried.
Talk to a clock tower.
It is not talking back. I'm going to need help.
Does nothing talk to you?
Lots of things talk to me, just not dogs and clock towers.
Anyway, so the canals are endless winding rivers full of boats and amuck and detritus of the city, equal parts its lifeblood and its waste. You can get anywhere here if you wish. I definitely wish. And let's see. I gotta go with strung up bone charms. It's basically the little magic that people along the canals or people in boats on the canals use to try to keep their boats afloat one more day without patching it. The street magic that people who are poor do because they can't afford to hire someone to do it correctly. So it's this is the makeshift magic, the street magic that people learn. Just the little stuff that works often enough that it's almost as good as the real stuff.
Gears, is there another one that stands out to you as interesting?
I'm sorry. I just recognized that I am Gears. Yeah. In the canals. Let's take a look. I kind of like the canals under the houses. I think those are some of my favorite canals.
Cool. And so is there sort of like, is this kind of the way that like you have all these houses who have basement levels that sort of open out on directly onto the canals?
Yeah, I was kind of picturing like a post-industrial Venice, if you will, where possibly there could be a street side, but there's definitely a canal side.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so strung up bone charms just to kind of check in. We can always like expand on these and add more. Is there anything else we kind of imagine about our canals before we kind of continue on here? Right now we have the strung up bone charms and under the houses.
Um, I think there's probably barrels and things like that that are there for either people to toss out waste in or for people to hide in. Maybe they leave some types of food out there because it's just too pungent to have inside.
I think there's a morning mist that just kind of rolls up off of these canals and kind of creates the perfect environment for kind of a seedy underbelly that operates before the sun rises.
Cool. And that brings it around to me. So for the alleys, tiny winding tunnels to the tallest brick roads between the houses. These are places full of secrets lurking just beneath the veneer of civility the rest of the city puts on. You can hide anything here or find anything. And I think from what we've gone over, I like the idea that oh, I'm torn between the two. Yeah, I'm gonna go with endless rats. They're just always every corner. Like you didn't think there was one where you were about to step, but there was one. Yeah, they're just everywhere in the alleys, and they are constantly gossiping, I assume. Tabitha.
I tell you, rats are either the best or the worst gossips, depending on how you look at it. I mean, they always have the best gossip, but I suppose if you're the person being gossiped about, that's like the worst gossip.
Hmm.
But either
I'm
way, I mean, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
hmm Has anyone here ever seen Hilda? Oh, it's an animated show, and what a recurring character, a side character in the show, is that there's a rat king that lives in the sewers that is just like a literal mass of rats that Hilda sometimes goes to because he knows all the everybody's secret in town, and trades secrets for day old sandwiches. But yeah, uh, Tabitha, did you have one that stood out to you?
Let's see what we got here. I'm really torn between trash palaces and the dark market. I mean,
I kind of
I
love
mean,
trash
I
palaces if
mean,
you're torn.
is there like a literal rat king like somewhere in these alleyways, like an actual like
well,
king of
not a
rats?
massive rats, but yeah, there's a well, I
Yes.
shouldn't say slightly. He's a significantly larger rat. But yes, there is a rat
Are,
ruler, if you
are
will.
we talking like horse sized?
No, just a
No.
rat of unusual size.
Okay, that size, yes.
Um, and in all honesty, it's probably capybara, but we just don't know that. So yeah, let's go with trash palaces.
Cool.
like this
And I'm just
elaborate
gonna
trash palace. That
actually
just
I don't even need to have one because there's already a large rat, maybe friendly. I'll also add maybe a king. Awesome.
and I think the rat's name is Gustav.
Okay.
A very dignified rat king.
Is there any other kind?
Awesome. And yeah, Damien, if you want to introduce for us the parks.
So it reads, magic has a strong connection to the forests, and the forests were once everywhere. Not anymore. Nowadays, they, and the magic they hold, is relegated to parks and gardens. However, it is far from gone. Now the aesthetics, I kind of want to kick this one over to you, Stephen, as far as the aesthetics are concerned.
I'll have one, like on the way we've done it anyway, I'll have one choice here. So if you want to pick one out yourself.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to throw in at least one Fae related thing. So we have fairy rings and we have bound Fae. I think, perhaps bound Fae is a good way to go. If we release a Fae, it can perhaps be a valuable ally or a kind of a troublesome obstacle, depending on who it is.
Cool. And I like the idea that there are. I like the idea that there are hidden communities in these parks. That they're either like hidden communities of Fae or of other folks that have found a place to live within the parks, away from the larger city. Does anyone else have any thoughts of like kind of things they imagine for these parks?
I want to get a sense as to the size. Are we talking like New York Central Park, like you could get lost wandering around in there, or do they tend to be kind of a smaller, like Oasis parks with like a small playground and a rusty swing set and a few trees, but otherwise that's kind of it?
I mean, I'm imagining, because the parks here are kind of specifically described as like associated with nature, but there's like at least some kind of like they're not just kind of the backyard swing set type parks, that these are actually kind of little groves and things within the city.
Yeah, I was thinking like there something that I really like that I see at some of the parks that we have are just like massive old trees. So I gotta imagine that you just have like these ancient trees that could be older than the city that kind of declared where a park would be preserved.
Mm-hmm. That actually makes me think, in California we have, I'm forgetting the name of it, but we have like, it's one of the last of like the kind of, in the Bay Area, one of the last kind of the old redwoods in the Bay Area is largely there, just because it's super inconvenient to get to. So nobody was ever able to like cut it down. But yeah, I like that. And I'm just kind of wondering if like in like the kind of, if it's like, if there's like just one tree that's managed to grow big enough that it's still like a part of like this, of like the skyline of the city.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Cool. And Nicholas, if you want to introduce the rooftops for us.
Before we do, one question about that largest old tree. Is this going to be the leaf variety of tree or the pine needle variety of tree?
This is an idea you threw out. Which interests you more?
I kind of like the leaf variety of tree because it is exotic from where I come from. So
yeah, and it just means that in the fall, like half the city is just like
Yes.
dealing with the leaves that fall off it.
Absolutely. That'll be great. All right. Next neighborhood. The rooftops are the great connector. We sit here with our friends, with the sky, with ourselves. Here we see the stars. Here we see innumerable lights of the city. Here the horizon looks so close we could reach out and touch it. And so, looking at the aesthetics, man, that first one's pretty nice. I got to read the rest of them though. Yeah, I'm going to go with those floating lanterns. That's just kind of magical, and I'd love to see that. And I think that that is what provides street illumination, is just these magic floating lanterns. So it's not like just a novelty. It serves a practical function as well.
Cool. And I'm wondering, Damien, does anything there stand out to you?
I'm thinking raised pathways, just so you can have kind of like a rooftop chase, without necessarily having to make the really long jumps. You can just sort of have 2 tiers to the city.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, like, that is exactly why there are these flying lanterns everywhere, because there's this like second like city above the city.
I like that. Yeah, it's kind of a 2-tiered setup that they've got, and you have people up top and you have people down below, and maybe there's some kind of class stratification across them, or maybe the city's just so big you need to have 2 tiers, but I like that.
Cool. And I am curious, like, then if this is because partly we've talked about the canals under the city, is just that the city, the actual like footprint of the city is just so small, but it's grown up, and so like you just can't, like, it's a very like that there are always like there's just waterways everywhere, so it's very hard to expand outwards in the city.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. I think that's great. I wonder, like, what physical constraints stopped it from sprawling out and caused it to do this upward sprawl instead.
Awesome. And finally, we have the mansions. Tabitha, if you wanted to introduce them.
Home to scumbags, generally. There's an actual description to read. Okay. So the mansions are an ideal, nobility or the divine right to rule. They are a symptom of wealth, the powerful sitting in their gleaming and rotten houses with eyes of cold silver and hearts of lifeless gold. You don't belong here. This place is not for you. Impulses to be dismissively cruel, to punish mistakes, to create the real problems. So, how dark do we want to go with this?
Well, what is your thought? And then we can kind of check in with folks what they're comfortable with.
I mean, the reason I'm asking is because of competitions and cruelty. And I don't necessarily think that's either dark or not, because it's competitions and cruelty. They're trying to outdo each other, being, jerks, assholes, evil people.
I mean, I'm fine with that. It does sort of play into the kind of industrialist we can portray. The sort that like decides to buy a dog too.
Yeah.
But that could also quite easily be industrial overlords.
Yeah.
I personally like the competitions of cruelty.
Yeah, that works for me.
All right. In that case, I will pick extravagant and exclusive festivities, and I'll fill in competitions and cruelty in the other slot. because it seems like those two things kind of go together, almost like those first scenes of the Atreides family arriving on Dune.
Yeah. I'm just imagining that on the rooftops there are places where walkways used to run, but we see there are places where they're like walkways that have been clearly like axed apart and broken down so that people can't cross over to where the exclusive festivities are taking place.
Yep. Um,
I kind of like the idea that they have destroyed all of the pathways, right? They're like,
Yeah.
no sky dwellers. We're getting rid of all of those high level pathways.
so those have just been like what put back up by people who refuse to let them win, and they're like made of garbage or whatever scrap wood we can find.
A couple pipes, a branch.
They're made of very suspect engineering. They could collapse quite easily.
Yeah, I like the idea, but they just have all these like rooftop gardens that like people are always sneaking into to steal the fruit from the trees and things.
That makes it sound fun.
I mean, there is always fun at crashing the parties of the wealthy.
I get the feeling this is like going to go someplace between like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and The Purge.
But yeah, awesome. So we are approaching the hour before we kind of take our second break from the evening, and then I think kind of pull back together to kind of maybe play out a few scenes, get a feel for the characters in the world. I did want to draw your attention to the very last tab there. We have things called paths. Paths are a little bit different from setting elements, but they kind of work in a similar way in that they have specific. Well, basically, their paths are things that we decide. You know what? I'm really interested in this happening in the story, and so they are kind of extra little bits that we can always choose to add to the world. And these represent sometimes storylines that apply to all of us, sometimes that are very specific. So, for example, there's like when we find a new place to live, we can start on the moving in path. And in that case, we all get some growth and we all get the access to moves from the moving in. All of us have access to those moves while that path is happening. Others are very specific and are individual, like getting a crush. When you get a crush on someone, you get access to a list of things that you can do to fill up a clock that is like psyching yourself up to confess your feelings to the crush.
All these mentions of the gang make me feel like this is some sort of elaborate episode of, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah. We are a bunch of like we're more or less friends with each other and hang out a lot. And given the stuff we've described, I do want to draw attention to the fact that there is the depths below for when the gang explores the sewers. It is literally when we decide to do a dungeon delve in this game is what that is. And also a dangerous meeting when someone visits the witch to get something from her. I just feel like that is a thing that might come up given Tabitha's past. But but yeah. So this isn't stuff we have to bring in right now, but like for the next session, if you want to browse through the prompts for those and see if there are any that like stand out to you as like, yeah, I'm really interested in seeing that in the story. These are like extra bits we can pull in. But that basically sums us up for character and world creation. We are coming up at 54 after, so I think I'm going to call another about a 10-minute break here, and we'll meet back up at 5 after, if that works for folks. Cool.
See you then. I'm back, Stephen.
Hey there. Hey there, everyone. So, to check in, have folks had enough of a break?
Yep.
Cool. So, I think at this point this is a good point to jump into sort of the kind of flow of play here. I'm fairly certain both of you have some experience with belonging outside belonging games before, right?
Yep.
Cool. So generally the way it works is that unlike other kind of GMless games, we a lot of the play doesn't necessarily follow a sort of like say Fiasco where there is a kind of specific kind of guidance as to how to set scenes. Instead, and this is kind of something we go back to with Dream Askew, is that there's kind of something Avery Alder called idle dreaming, where we kind of think out loud about scenes that we'd be particularly interested in seeing or questions we're interested in answering. I'm wondering, Tabitha or Damien, if either of you had particular things that you were interested uh, in seeing play out here.
I can come up with probably 3 off the top of my head. For my character in particular, the question of what does my god want for the world, and what part do I play in making that happen? For kind of everyone's character, because Tabitha's very anti-authority, I think. Excuse me. And my character and Gears have kind of this common distaste for the factory. I think there could be definitely a scene where we bring down the factory owner or disrupt their operations in some way, kind of a rebellious teenagers wrecking stuff kind of thing. And between my character and Alloy, I think there is quite a lot of supernatural fae stuff that can come up. So those are the 3 big things that kind of tie my character to the others, I think.
I just want to steal some pastries. I'm hungry. Or maybe if it's an independent merchant and they're not too awful, like we could do like a trade or something like that. Or maybe they just like the way I smile. Who knows?
I'm fine with stealing if it's from the right people.
Right?
Yeah, I'm actually, because we're getting into this conversation, I'm wondering if what is the rooftop garden the two of you are sneaking into as you are having this conversation play out?
Ooh. Has fruit trees.
Yeah, maybe it kind of inexplicably grows oranges year round, irrespective of what the weather is, or even what the I don't know what the climate is even like here. Do we get all 4 seasons, or is this like Southern California?
Well, I mean, every once in a while, when like there's a homeowner or someone who's got their rooftop garden and they want to make sure that it's getting enough water, they'll tap me to make sure it gets some rain, and they tend not to complain too much if I take some fruit off of the tree. So what they don't know won't hurt them, right? They'll always grow more. Plus, every once in a while, we find like walnut trees or, some sort of nut tree so we can get some protein.
Is this a publicly owned garden, or is it on someone's property, kind of on their own rooftop?
No, I was imagining it was on someone's own property. That this sounded like you're talking about stealing some pastries and food. I mean, I was imagining that this is in one of the rooftops of the wealthy that you were sneaking into.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, yeah, that works. So, are we talking mansion wealthy, or like penthouse still firmly within the urban sprawl wealthy?
I'm thinking wealthy enough that we don't need to figure out what kind of wealthy they are because, they're wealthy.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, most people don't have, most people are doing better than we are because they at least have a roof over their head, and we're lucky if we have like a tent. But, these are people who have roofs over their head. Roofs, plural.
Well, yeah. The reason I ask is because I'm trying to figure out what kind of building we're on.
Well, I'm figuring it's got to be like a 3 or 4 story tall building, lots of ornate crafting on it, filigreed window shades, that sort of thing.
Okay, and it's a mansion or a house owned by one family, or is it kind of like, this floor is this family, and then below that is an apartment at this family, and it kind of goes down?
I feel like it's the equivalent of a McMansion.
Okay.
So it's not like a mansion, but it is more house than anyone needs, but it's owned by a single family. But rooftops.
Right, and they have pastries.
Well, they've got fruit and nuts. I mean, we can trade that for pastries, or we can steal the pastries someplace else, or who knows, maybe we get lucky.
So we're taking the fruit and nuts off the trees then, and that's our business with this house right now.
I mean, I feel like that's our business with the house right now. Who knows? There could be some other business that pops up. Maybe we can find something useful.
Did we get up here through a rooftop pathway, or did we have to scaffold up to the top, or like climb?
That's a good question. Maybe we had some kind of like grappling hook device that Gears put together.
I like that. Clicking
And
over
like we were like across the street, and we just like shoot it up at where we wanted to go, and kind of fix the lower rope so we
It's
can
just a
slide
miniaturized grappling hat.
Right? The hook gets
Just
fired
based
out
off
of
the
steam
Steam hat design, but just much smaller and handheld. Still a hat, but handheld.
Glad to see that hat technology has continued to advance in this world that we've created. So yeah, I mean, I think that would allow us to be like a floor below and across the street, and we can just like kind of set the rope up so that we can climb up it and slide down it for quick evac.
That works. Alloy, are you keeping watch, or are you coming with us?
I'm gonna pick up the mansions for now, and I think this will be a scene with you too, because so that somebody can be the world here.
Okay.
Got it. So this one is just me and Tabitha.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I could be keeping watch. That certainly sounds fair.
So
I shout across. There is a cloud that looks like a bear.
and I'll like hold my finger up to my lips and say, "Shh."
I couldn't hear that.
Quiet.
Quit it? What? Quit what?
Be quiet.
Right, I'll be quiet. Okay, I can do that. I'll
just
be quiet starting now.
I'll roll my
1,
eyes.
2, 3.
And at this point, I'm just gonna like kind of move my finger slightly and hook that bear-shaped cloud and kind of gesture it over. And it's gonna get real dark and gray and start pouring. And I am doing a growth move. I am summoning rain that reflects my mood. And it's concealing us and encouraging people to get inside and, with any luck, drowning out the yelling that's going on across the street as our warning system.
But yeah, as you do that, there is a kind of bustle from the roof that you're climbing up onto. You hear, oh dear, I did not expect rain today. Man, bring the umbrellas, please. Yes, that's good. And you basically see as you peek up over the side an older woman in her 60s doting on a 14-year-old dressed in the fine livery of the city as two servants who are soaked through by the rain are holding umbrellas over the two of them as the two like nibble at a massively large plate of pastries, like far more than either of them could eat. And the servants look very bedraggled by all this.
Okay, so seeing this, I think I'm going to show off with a small spell while I'm hanging from the roof or hanging from this rope that's going across the street. I'm going to give him a nice rain of frogs. And obviously that, by this point, I'm just like I have my legs kind of dangling, like hooked onto this rope because this is a little bit more involved magic. And so, I'm kind of moving my hands in a curious way while mumbling a few things under my breath so that this, bear-shaped cloud will now dispense a lot of frogs.
I'm curious, Damien, as Tabitha decides to dangle by her legs from this rope, to cast this spell. What is Damien's reaction here?
So, to clarify, are the two rich folks up at the top of
Yes,
the
they're in this
roof?
rooftop garden.
I see. I think I am behind Tabitha on the rope, so I'm kind of getting up there second. And I think what I'll do is I'll take the dusty old hood that my character has under their look, and I have it pulled up over my mouth and nose and up over my head, not only to protect my identity from these people who I'm about to rob, but also to protect myself from the rare amphibian that is now bouncing, or rather hopping off my head.
There's definitely you hear this chorus of ribbiting as the rain as this rain of frogs patters down, and the older woman gives a shriek and says, frogs, what nonsense is this? Come in, Francis dear, we are not dealing with frogs. And the young boy says, but I haven't gotten to taste all of them. That's quite enough. We shall just have to throw these out. They're ruined anyway. And as the two like bustle inside, you can see Francis kicking aside the stray frog, like with harsh, very mean kicks, like unnecessarily mean.
Mhm.
What did the two of you do?
Well,
I was just gonna say I will use my chill move whisper and just say very quietly beneath the pitter patter of frog hops, Tabby, I think you're up.
have the servants followed them inside?
Uh, I think one of them seeing that the two are being ferried away inside kind of sneaks a peek the direction they came from and then like reaches out and starts nibbling on one of these abandoned pastries.
And I think that's when I'll hop up onto the roof and like put my finger to my lips and say, "Shh,
Oh, oh, oh dear, what?
it's okay. We just want some pastries too. We're hungry just like you are."
Well, very well. Just don't make too much of a mess. I will have to clean this all up later. And he gives like a very kind of like his two eyes points at you two. I will be keeping an eye on you to make certain that this place is as clean. And he looks around at the frogs, free of frogs, as at the start of the day, because I am guessing that this has something to do with the two of you.
I will put on my most innocent face that I can muster, and I will smile and say, this is just coincidence. I mean, who could actually summon a rain of frogs? I mean, that's that's powerful magic, isn't it?
As you're having this conversation, I think that I have crept up and am kind of quietly around back, picking walnuts and various fruits and emptying them into a bag that I've brought with me. And where I can, I'm cleaning up and putting a frog in there with all the nuts and fruits. Just I'm a man of my word, and I do intend to clean up the place.
These frogs are going to get hurt if we leave them here, and I have no intention of letting the frogs get hurt. Frogs are friends. So I'll pull out a sack and say, "Listen, if we just kind of like sweep some of the pastries into a bag, would that leave it clean enough for you? And then take the frogs with us."
He gives a look at you and then like grabs a few more choice pastries from the plate and says, yes, that should do nicely.
And I'll just grin and say, "I've tried that one before. It's good. Have you ever had it?"
It's been a bit long. Usually we don't get the opportunity to.
Well, take another one. I mean, they're going to be thrown. Well, I mean, you're supposed to throw them away. I'm not going to tell.
And I am actually wondering here if you are, because this is sort of a weird way of going about it, but are you stirring up the muck at the bottom?
Well, that's a heck of a good question. So we're over in mansions, right?
Yeah.
We've highlighted inequalities between people. Um, and I'm wondering, does this servant count as a board guard?
That could be a board guard. I was picturing them as the person that hates children.
I mean, they can't hate children. Okay, with a kid like that, sure, but they don't seem to hate me. They seem a little exasperated, maybe.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily view it as like children, but more just children. I didn't ask
Gotcha.
for more children to her today.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. So where do I find stirring up the muck?
That's in your moves, for your desperate moves.
Oh,
That's why I was one asking. Because it like metaphorically, I was curious if you were stirring up the muck at the bottom to see what was there.
hmm. You know what? Go to David for a second. Let me think about that for a
Sure.
moment.
So for me, I am uh, kind of dividing out the fruit and nuts and pastries into kind of equal-sized portions. Um, Sort of enough for me and enough for Alloy and enough for Tabitha, and enough for Gears. And as I do that, I'm going to set aside a small amount of my own portion. And perhaps after the scene has concluded, I intend to give that to a street kid, as a way of performing a small sacrifice to the tired god.
Does your stomach grumble a little as you look at that set aside portion?
Yeah, it's been probably 18, 20 hours since I've eaten anything, at least.
Cool. And I'm curious if there is sort of anything you sort of, because you talked about wanting to get a sign from the tired god. I was curious what kind of sign was Damien looking for?
Uh, I'm thinking here for a moment. I think a sign as to what this god's intent is for the city. What does it want the city to turn into or become? What is the role that it intends to play in shaping the course of the history of the city? I mean, um, so I hope that's not too vague of an answer.
Yeah, because I think it's as you gather up these nuts that you feel the necklace on your neck shimmer a little and rattle, almost as you come near this walnut tree. And as you look at it, you realize it's an old tree. This tree must have, like, it's been on this rooftop for a long time, probably since before this rooftop was like part of the mansion that you're on now. And it's you can feel that it is an old thing, something very wise. But all these chains, much like the one on your neck, have been wrapped around it. And you can feel like it's been unable to speak or move for a long time, that someone trapped it here.
As I kind of top off the rest of my bag, I'll say to the uh, servant, "Hey, why are these chains wrapped around this tree?"
Well, it's a silly story that the mistress likes to tell the young master. It's they say it used to be one of uh, those moving trees, the trees that used to get up and walk about in the old days. A bunch of nonsense that the country folk like to tell. But, well, you don't, he shrugs, you don't want to take risks on something like that. Why, a moving tree could practically tear apart a house.
Hmm. Well, we're in need of some extra chain link. Since this is just, after all, an old country superstition, you wouldn't mind if I took these, would you?
He gives you a very serious look. If I say yes, will that get you out of here sooner?
I don't want to. I don't want us to be like keeping you from your duties. If you want to go inside, we can take care of this stuff, and you won't even have to deny it because you didn't see it. And I'll smile sweetly. And this is very much trying to make do without money, because we're offering a trade or swap, doing a favor, good old-fashioned theft, and a sweet smile simultaneously.
Grabs another pastry. Be quick about it. And he hurries off inside.
That's when I'll reach into my bag, and I'm sure I've got some kind of something that will help with this that I can hand to Damien from Gears. And in the meantime, I'll dip my finger in some mud and I'll draw a sigil on the door.
What are you doing with that mud, Tabby?
This rooftop garden is very nice. They don't deserve it. That door, it's about as strong as iron now, and it's not going to open for them. Ever.
You scare me sometimes.
But, we're friends. And they deserved it. They've earned it. I mean, look at this place. Think about how long we could live here. Think about how we wouldn't be hungry ever again.
Sooner or later, they'll find a way back up here, even if they have to grappling hook it like we did.
Yes, but they don't have gears. They'll have to use ladders or something like that. They'll be able to get back up here, but at that point, that tree, well, should have been able to figure out a way to escape, right?
Well, just as soon as I can get these chains off, and I'll kind of begin tugging and pulling on them and seeing if they're locked anywhere or if there's a knot or something that's preventing me from just taking them off.
I mean, yeah, I think that there are several padlocks across them. And something I did want to ask, because I'm looking at your moves, I'm wondering if anything that you found out about this place makes you angry.
I mean, just above and beyond the fact that they've trapped an otherwise innocent tree here intentionally.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at your growth moves.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that the main thing that's just angering is the fact that I can't get these freaking locks off of the tree. And I think it's really beginning to pull on me, almost literally, as this necklace begins to feel more and more heavy as I try with little success to get these chains off.
So are you getting angry because these people have been cruel to this ancient tree?
I think so.
Because if you do that, that gives you a token that you can then use to bring the power of the old tired god to bear.
Right. I'm curious, is the tree planted in soil that is just kind of in a just kind of built into the rooftop, or how is the tree planted?
Yeah, it's like in a rooftop planter.
I see. I wonder if there's any way that I can allow myself to get angry and yeah, we can kind of do it one of two ways. I can either just physically break the planter apart, just hit it really hard, kick it, swear at it, something like that. Or if I can become angry to get a token and then immediately spend it to utter some prayer that dispels the locks and they fall apart on their own. Between the two, I suppose the second one's cooler.
Yeah. I want to say that as you get angry and crack it open, like the planter breaks apart under your kick, and nestled among the roots of the tree are little, like, I think that besides the chain, what is a symbol of it unnamed that you believe it to be?
Got it, got it. And you said that it's nestled within the roots?
Yeah.
I see, I see. I'm thinking perhaps a little wooden token that is been whittled kind of with a small carving knife into a shape that is kind of analogous to what I have on my necklace. But it looks to have been whittled apart maybe by something very old, and the token itself seems to be very, very old. It has kind of a quality that I might not recognize as such, but maybe it has kind of a fey quality to it. Something that maybe I could bring to Alloy and ask them about later.
Well, yeah, what I was thinking was that because you feel that this is something that has the power of your god in it. And it's a fading little ember of your god. It's not something that will last long in the world, but you feel like you could probably pull on its magic just a little bit to break the chains here.
Yeah. So I think that what I will do is I'll take this token, and again, it's, maybe yay size, it just fits into the palm of your hand, and I'll kind of fit it between both hands, and whatever little ember of energy I can find in it, I will pull that into me and then begin to just lay those same hands on the locks as they just begin to fall away.
And I think that there is a groan, and at that moment there is a pounding at the door as you hear someone trying to get in, but of course they can't because of that spell that Tabitha cast. But your gazes are pulled away from a moment, and when you come back, the walking tree is gone.
We should probably go.
I didn't think that would actually work, and it's unclear whether I'm talking about Tabitha's sigil or whether I was talking about the lock breaking or the tree walking.
Regardless, like, grab up any frogs you see left, grab up any other stuff you want to take, and let's get the heck off this roof, because I don't think that servant's going to be quite so nice, Nick, in a minute.
Agreed. And I'll throw my hood down, stuff as many frogs as I can into it, and pulling the bag over one arm, I will begin to kind of rappel or slide down the rope.
Real talk here is the big haul here for Tabitha the food or the frogs?
If I have to choose one and leave the other behind, I'm going to take the frogs.
I was just curious. I was just curious of what the real treasure for Tabitha.
I mean, it's the frogs are our friends. They helped us out. They probably weren't that happy about falling from a rain cloud, but I don't want to let that kid have any more of them than I will probably take an extra 30 seconds just to make sure I gotten every frog I can see, and then slide down after Damien.
And with that being said, I mean, I think we'll run back to Alloy, and when I do get the chance, if we come across some, street child or someone who seems to be in need, I will toss them some pastry or some fruit from my my share of the haul, as a way of making, like I said, that small sacrifice to the god.
Mm-hmm.
As I shake through the rope, I'll kind of look at Alloy and Damien and say, "Such a nice house. I wish I could have gotten something for my outfit."
Alloy just kind of stares at you silently.
Alloy, you can talk again. We're not trying to.
Okay, that was a long time to hold my breath.
I didn't say hold your breath.
What? You said be quiet.
I have to be much more literal with you, don't I?
And anyway, what and anyway, as I like go fishing around in the bags and a bunch of frogs just start hopping out, what did y'all get?
Got some pastries, we got some nuts, we got some fruit. The frogs are not for eating. They're our friends.
Oh, okay.
They help us out.
I'm gonna call this one Damien. And it's just a really sad, frowny looking frog. And I put it on Damien's head.
Maybe not when I'm trying to eat, huh, Alloy? And I'm like peeling an orange while the frog is like right here, kind of almost like leaning off, trying to get kind of a toady little arm reaching out toward it.
Damien, if you want the frog to stop bothering you or stop like reaching towards your orange, if you can get it to fly, that'll totally work.
Tabitha, don't you have some way of, like unsummoning these things?
Yeah, it's called taking them back to the canals.
Is that where these are from? I thought you just made them.
No, everything comes from somewhere.
I'll take Frog Damien off my head and kind of tuck him into kind of my arm here, and kind of give him a pat on the head, and only then realize that I'm using the same hand I touched the frog with to eat, and it really brings me to a point, kind of a stalemate with my food, but I'll continue eating with the frog tucked into my arm. Well, in any case, I guess we'd better get to the canals sooner rather than later, because,
right.
Well, these guys deserve to have a home at least.
Right. And I'll put my bag down on the rooftop and kind of whistle at the frogs that Alloy let loose.
Yeah, a lot of them are just sitting on Alloy at the moment. Like a few are like one is like propped up on the tip of one of her antler horns. Another's like sitting on the shoulder. One's like clung onto her back.
Now, Alloy, remember, we need to get all of these frogs and we need to get them back down to the canals.
But I've already named them all. Marceline and Rebecca and Frog Gears and Frog Tabitha.
And all I'm saying is they can absolutely keep those names, but we need to get them back down to the canals because frogs need moisture. Frogs need water. They're not going to get water up here on a rooftop.
We kind of took them out of their homes. The least we can do is put them back where we found them, you know?
As Damien says.
Oh, okay. I see. Just
Well,
like just oh, go ahead.
It just if there's a nice park that you like and there's water like a lake or a pond or something there, we could do that.
Oh, I know just the place. And I think we do kind of a cut as as like the group of us are like putting down these frogs at the edge of a little pond. And Alloy kind of like looks up across this pond and says, like, I think it's like like a little park pond, not like a in the middle of the wilderness pond, to clarify.
Right.
Um and goes like, huh, I was that tree always there?
And I'll look at Damien and kind of grin.
Huh. Looks like these frogs aren't the only thing returning to their home.
This was a really good heist. We got pastries and we got fruit and we got nuts and frogs helped us out and we got them put them back in the water and there's a new tree in the city.
First time I've ever stolen a tree.
And plus, there's an old rich woman who's probably going to be really pissed if she ever manages to get back onto her rooftop.
And I think that it's at that moment, like as the group of us, I think like probably Alloy kind of takes off. Actually, I don't think she ever wears boots. I think she's just always barefoot. Just like sits down at the edge and dips her feet into the pond as like frogs like swim about them, and just kind of stares over across it at the this old tree.
This new old tree or old new
Yes.
tree?
Yes. And it kind of adds something to the view, don't you think?
Yeah, it does. I like the leaves,
Looks better here than on that rooftop.
doesn't it?
And I
Something
think...
brings me.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Were you going to say something, Puckett? I think we may have we've either lost connection with you or you muted yourself somewhere, pulled something out. Okay, I think we've lost Puckett for a moment. So what were you going to say, Damien?
I was just going to say that, just as a small detail, I was going to say that as I say that, you have like a frog tongue come from off screen and like hit a fly and fly back.
I think it like flies out from behind your back, and just without your knowing, Damien has like managed to like cling on back there without you knowing about it.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I think that we ran into a connection issue there. It looks like Puckett dropped.
Yeah, let's see. We're probably going to end here, but let's give him Puckett a moment to jump back on, and we'll
Sure.
do some stars and wishes if that's cool with folks.
Sounds good to me.
Also, take a look since we're wrapping up here. Do you think you hit any of your desires?
Yeah, I've been kind of keeping tabs on those. I don't think yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I perhaps the next time we play, I'll get the opportunity to, but I don't think I've pulled that off just yet.
Let me actually ping him over on the Slack to see if
Sure.
he...
Oh, I just got an email.
Oh.
Yeah. Looks like Puckett might not be able to make it back for this session, but
Okay, so in that case,
yeah,
we'll just do stars and wishes via the email, and wrap things up here. But thanks for coming around. I had a lot of fun with everyone. Unfortunately, I can't say that to Puckett, who's not here right now, but I did have a lot of fun with you, David. I'm looking forward to getting the full group together next week. Have a good evening, morning, whenever all. Bye.
yeah, you as well. Have a good one and take care.